This is the story of an Aussie who stood up to an American corporation. It was a true David and Goliath battle, and he actually won. But this David and Goliath fighting relationship had not always been this way. In fact, Burger King and this Australian had a great working relationship for about 25 years. And so, to tell the story, we'll have to go back in time. So, we'll turn on a time machine and go back to 1969. Alright, so there's a Canadian insurance salesperson by the name of Jack Cowin, and he was in the process of moving to Perth, Australia. That is in Western Australia, which other people know as the western part of Australia. And on his way to Perth, he stopped by at Sydney, and in Sydney he noticed that Australians love fast food. I mean, guilty. So he ran the idea past his dad in Canada, and they both agreed that was a great idea. So Jack got to work, and from investors in Western Australia, he was able to raise $300,000. And bear in mind, that is in 1969 money, so that's actually pretty impressive. And he got off to a great start, as KFC at the time were expanding to go to Australia. And so he became the Australian franchisee for KFC, and he opened up 10 KFCs. And meanwhile, in 1969, over at the United States, there was a burger chain that was doing incredibly well, and its name was Burger King. And they were now at the point where they were considering international expansion. And so they put the feelers out to the country, and they met this man by the name of Jack Cowin, who I was just talking about, who was running the 10 KFC restaurants. And I thought, this guy would be a perfect franchisee for a burger chain as we expanded into the land down under. So the American Burger King and Jack shook hands, and they made a deal that Jack would open up Burger Kings in Australia. However, there was just one problem with this. And this problem was that there were currently 17 restaurants in Australia by the name of Burger King, and they belonged to this other guy named Don Dervan. And it is just a pure coincidence that his chain was called Burger King as well. Oh, and Don had registered the trademark name of Burger King in 1966, and these trademarks last for about 30 years. But as it turns out, Don was actually getting a little bit over the burger business at the time, so it was a bit of lucky timing, and so Don sat down with the American Burger King and they negotiated for a fair price where he would sell the 17 restaurants to the fast food giant. But he left out the rights to use the Burger King name in Australia out of that deal. So obviously you can imagine that the lawyer operating on Burger King's behalf would have received a massive pineapple for that. Anyway, Jack was about to get to work in opening up all the Burger King restaurants in Australia until the American Burger King stopped him and said, "Oh, hang on mate, we don't actually have the rights to use Burger King in Australia, but here's what we're going to do. We can do everything as we originally planned, same restaurant layouts, same menus, everything can be exactly the same, but we just have to trade under a different name. So what we've done, mate, is that we've created a bit of a list for you of the names that we would approve if you were to choose them, and then we can just trade under that name in Australia until we figure out this whole Burger King trademark mess." And out of a list that Burger King provided to Jack, there was one name that really jumped out at him. And this name was the Hungry Jack. And I know this seems like a very random name to be on an approved list from Burger King, but the reason that this name was even an option was because Burger King was owned by a pancake maker known as Pillsbury. And Pillsbury had a particular pancake product that was called the Hungry Jack. And so Jack Cowin looked at this and thought, hey, that's kind of cool. That's got my name in it. And so Jack opened up the first Hungry Jacks on the 18th of April, 1971. And then between 1971 to 1990, between the Burger King America and the Hungry Jacks Australian franchise, Jack Cowin's Hungry Jacks, their relationship was pretty uneventful. I mean, they grew pretty rapidly. They had a lot of successes along the way, a few ups and downs, but nothing that's really worth really talking about, nothing too exciting, just standard old business growth. So now I'll fast forward to 1990, and the American Burger King are worried that Jack is wielding too much power as a franchisee. I mean, he had an entire country under him, and in fact he was the second most powerful franchisee in the entire world, with the most powerful being in the United States itself. And so in 1991, Hungry Jack's had to renew the contract for the partnership, and this new agreement allowed Hungry Jack's to directly license new third parties. And in exchange for this, Burger King threw in a condition that he must be opening up 4 restaurants per year. And at the time of this signing, Jack did not see a problem with this because Hungry Jack's was expanding at a way faster rate than 4 stores per year anyway, so this is a condition that was going to be easily met. And so between 1991 to 1996, Burger King suddenly made it really hard for Jack to be able to open the new restaurants in order to achieve his 4 new restaurants per year. They were sabotaging him in very subtle, clever ways, as far as just drowning him in bureaucracy and making him dot ridiculous I's and cross ridiculous T's in order to open up new restaurants. And at the time, Jack didn't really think much of it. He just thought that they must have gotten some bureaucratic stooges in the chain and that they just didn't realize that they're making life so hard for him. But as it turns out, the year was 1996. And why is this year so important? That year is important was because back in 1966, Don Dervan had registered the name Burger King, but now that 30-year claim to that trademark name had expired, meaning that they could choose to legally use the name Burger King in Australia. So now Burger King saw themselves with a bit of a unique opportunity that could solve 2 of the problems at the same time. One problem being is that Jack as a franchisee is wielding way too much power, and the second problem being is that they cannot actually use their brand name in this country that they'd expanded into. So they thought, why don't we try and solve these 2 problems at the same time? They're terminating the franchise agreement that they had with him on the clause that he was not opening enough fast food restaurants per their contract, knowing full well the only reason that he wasn't opening 4 restaurants per year was because they had made life incredibly hard for him. And meanwhile, whilst they were doing this, Burger King made a separate licensing agreement where they'd start up Burger Kings on the highway Shell fuel stations, and so then people could go in there as they're refilling their car. But fortunately, Jack did not take this laying down. So him, along with his company Competitive Foods Australia, began legal proceedings against Burger King, claiming that Burger King had violated the conditions of the master franchise agreement. And the Supreme Court of New South Wales agreed with Jack and determined that Burger King had violated the terms of the agreement and awarded Hungry Jack's with a sum of $41.6 million that Burger King now had to pay to Jack Cowin. And this is back in 2001 money as well. So the court stated that Burger King sought to engineer a default of the franchise agreement so that the company could limit the number of Hungry Jack's branded stores and then swoop in to take the Aussie market on its own. And the court saw that the United States Burger King was operating in bad faith. So after this case, the American fast food giant had a bit of time to reflect, and in 2002, they withdrew all of the resources that had anything to do with trying to bring Burger King directly to Australia, and they just decided to just let Jack happily run the Australian franchise. And so, as I say, go big or go home. And so Burger King packed up all of his stuff and they took all of the resources away, just leaving everything to Jack. However, they didn't go home though. They went to New Zealand instead, or specifically Trans-Pacific Foods. And so things went back to the way they were, where Jack was happily just running all of Burger King's resources within Australia, and the Burger King chain themselves stayed out of Australia and just let that purely be Jack's territory. And from this point of the story, it's a little bit of a happily ever after for Jack Cowin. As of September 2021, Hungry Jack's has 440 stores, and 75% of them are directly owned by Jack's company. Other things of note that happened after this is that in 2013, Jack sold all of his KFC outlets to Collins Foods. Oh, and I should mention as well, because I didn't say this earlier, he also is a shareholder in Domino's Pizza. And in 2017, he was ranked the 20th richest person in all of Australia. And this is according to the Australian Financial Review. Anyway, going back to the happily ever after, he lives with his wife Sharon, and he has 4 children. So, now you know why Burger King is called Hungry Jack's in Australia.